Hi everybody, this is Maya Good and I'm here for another Author Answers question. And today's question that I'm going to be answering is there an author who is often criticized that you love to read? And if so, who is it? But before I answer that, I want to acknowledge the fact that I am really close to 500 subscribers. So I think what I'm going to do for the 500 subscriber mark is once I reach 500 subscribers, I'm going to do an Ask Me Anything. So if you have any questions that you want answered on Ask Me Anything, go ahead and leave them down below. And I am pretty much an open book. There are very few questions that I won't answer. So go ahead and just literally ask me anything. And once I reach 500 subscribers, I will go ahead and do a video. So, is there an author who's often criticized who I love to read? Yes, there is. I love Anais Nin. I discovered her in middle school. I remember we were having banned book week, and there was this commercial that was showing on MTV that it was just black, and there was like a figure, and then all of a sudden there were the words of one of Anais Nin's stories being narrated. And in the bottom, in really, really tiny print, it said Anais Nin, Delta of Venus. But I couldn't read it because it was so fast and the print was so small and my mom's TV was just that bad. So I spent the next 2 years trying to figure out where this quote came from and what book it's from and how to find this book. I had no idea. And then I found it in the local library and I checked it out. And I fell in love with Anais Nin. For those who don't know, Anais Nin is just this amazing writer. She wrote erotic stories for pay by the page in order to make ends meet. And her erotic stories really push a lot of boundaries, and they also have a lot of literary merit. And so when you read them, they just get into you. And these stories are often banned. They are often criticized for a lot of different reasons. She has a lot of themes of incest. She has themes of children and men going crazy and cheating and drugs. Pretty much you name it, it's gonna be in one of Anais Nin's stories, to the point where all of her collections were published posthumously. And because, this was something that she did in order to pay bills, she did other stuff that was her love as far as writing goes. But these stories were sent out by the page in order to make ends meet. And really, they kind of were like the groundwork of how she built her writing chops. Like if you read some of her early stories compared to some of her late stories, you can see the growth of Anais Nin as a writer, which is just fascinating in and of itself. And so because they're heavily banned, there are stories in there that I used to joke, if this was written nowadays, it could never get published. Like, never. Especially like Little Birds. There's no way a modern author could write that collection and publish it without just having massive backlash. And this really came to a point recently because there's been a new collection of her stories that came out, and Amazon actually censored it so that you cannot search for it online. And the name of the stories, let me get the name of it because it's hard to pronounce. It's Auletris, Auletris. And yes, and Amazon took a whole bunch of flack for it. They requested that the publisher delete some stuff from the book. The publisher put their foot down and said, no way. You published 50 Shades of Grey. This actually has literary merit. And Anais Nin is a huge public figure in this realm of writing. And no, we're not going to censor this book. And so, yeah, it was kind of a big deal. Anais Nin, because she was a woman and she was writing for men by the page, so pretty much she would have like a private client that would say, I want you to write a story for me. I'll pay you, $1 a page or whatever it was at that time. And then she would crank out these stories. And there is a delicacy to her writing that is missing from a lot of the erotic writing of that time. We're talking early 20th century. There's just a delicacy. There's a literary feel to her words. And she was really exploring herself as well. And so she broaches topics that a lot of writers would not touch with a 10-foot pole. And I think that's what I admire most about Anais Nin is her bravery in her writings and just her honesty in her writings. the very first story I ever read was The Hungarian Adventurer, and it blew me away. It made me feel uncomfortable. It made me feel so many emotions. And even though I don't write erotica, I feel like she has pointed the way towards the type of writer I want to be. Her word level attention to detail, even though these are short stories that were just cranked out to make some dude happy, there's an attention to detail and there's an art to her stories that's really quite fascinating. And yeah, I think, of all the writers I read, that's probably the one that is most criticized and most banned. So until next time, ciao.